So I do want to thank Lainey, I want to thank Leanne, I want to thank Julie Clough, I want to thank the team that invited me, that celebrated Tammy, and that creates this environment for parents all over the state of Utah to be a force for change. My remarks today are going to, I hope, maybe in keeping with Tammy's message, remind you that you are already a force. Remind you that when you think about your own role, however small you may feel, and again, I want to say, from my point of view, sometimes we all feel small. However small you may feel, however discouraged, however big the world out there may seem at times, you have an enormous power to make a difference. And if you ask me, I might be the oldest person in the room. Don't be sure. I think we have more of a chance of making a difference in this country right now than we've ever had. There is more openness to change. There is more searching for new answers. There's more willingness to try new things now than there ever has been. That's no guarantee that we're going to get it right. But we got a shot, a big chance. So I start with this idea of a new normal. And you'll hear a little bit more about this as we go along. But the question right at the beginning for all of us is, as we come out of the pandemic, what new normal are we looking for? I don't know how many of you noticed that a few days ago, the astronaut Michael Collins died. He was the guy who took this picture. It's a famous picture because people will say that every living creature is in the picture, except one, except the guy who took it. And people then argue, well, not the people on the backside of the earth, they're not in the picture because they're in the shadow. No, okay, you get the point. This is the picture Michael Collins took from the orbiting capsule of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin in the lunar module, and the Earth in the background. The thing that really surprised me was that it projected an air of fragility. Why, I don't know. I love this. I don't know to this day. I just had a feeling. It's tiny, it's shiny, it's beautiful, it's home, and it's fragile. It's tiny, it's shiny, it's beautiful, it's home, and it's fragile. One of his regrets, if you read more about the life of this extraordinary American, this extraordinary astronaut, is that he never felt that the rest of us could appreciate the fragility that he sensed from his view from the moon, that we didn't understand how fragile we were. And in some sense, as we engage in this discussion today, I think we all know, every parent in this room knows how fragile your children have been, even if they're grown up. Yeah, there's a couple of sneers over here. I'm not fragile. But parents know. Parents know how fragile the life, the hopes, the dreams, the desire to belong, the desire to stay safe, the desire to find friends, how fragile our children are. And yet, we sometimes forget to nurture the fragility, to recognize it, to own it. If you want to now, you know what my next slide is. You want to know what's really fragile is a Republican governor welcoming Kennedy to the state of Utah. You can see he looks uncomfortable, right? But he wasn't running again, so he could put the picture up. He knew it would be used against him if he did. But the point is actually important. It's fragile for us to work together right now. Isn't that an amazing thing to say? That to cross boundaries is a little scary for people today. We're worried that we're going to have to give up our principles. We're worried that we're going to have to compromise with someone we don't agree with. We're worried that we're going to be seen as a betrayer to our side if we work with people on the other side. We're worried that we're not going to be strong enough advocates for our point of view if we dare take the step of crossing divides. This is not good for us. And you all know this data, but I'm going to bring this data back to our children in a minute. But remember how divided we are. This data, believe it or not, this data precedes the pandemic. I thought I should update the data, but I'm just going to be updating it with new data that says the exact same thing. We feel as a country deeply divided from one another. And the bottom graph in this says 90% of us believe it's a serious problem. And when we looked at this, we saw the same. 90% of us think it's a serious problem, but almost none of us know what to do about it. Isn't that something? We're facing dilemmas of certain fragility, and we're a little stuck. What do I do? I don't like it. I don't like feeling disrespected. I don't like being angry all the time, but I don't know what to do. And you know, the problem is that the political has become personal. Almost half of Americans, that means if you split the room down right here, I drew a line down the middle of the room, this half of the room would report being sometimes or almost always lonely. So look, if you're on this side of the room, look over there and imagine that whole, all of you. Just imagine, you're all lonely. Don't make it a statistic. Look over at someone else. Half of the people in this room feel lonely. I know. It's hard. Half of us feel lonely in our own families because of some of the tension that's been visited upon us by, I would argue, by outside forces that we don't control. A third of Americans, this is just a few weeks ago, 30% say they want their state to leave the union. And 25% of us have ended a relationship with someone we know. I was talking to a gentleman today, just earlier this afternoon. He says, I've known Mike since we were in third grade. He's about my age, late 50s. Not quite my age, but close enough. I've known him since we were in third grade, and last year after the election, he called me and said, our friendship is over. He said, don't reach out to me ever again. They played football. He said, I can't tell you. We played football together. We were best friends together. We had sleepovers together. We grew up together. We were at each other's weddings. So, you know, we can talk about politics or we can talk about the media as though it's over there, you know, and raising our kids is over here, but it's coming, it's washing through us. It's causing a great deal of damage. But here's the thing, in my view at least. Division may be deep, it may be painful, it may be troubling, it may be depressing, but it's not unavoidable. So Tammy mentioned the book, and I'm very grateful to Zions Bank for supporting its being able to be gifted to each of you. I hope you'll enjoy it. If you're like me, you don't like reading long books, the chapters here are just a page. Yeah, parents are too busy to read long books, right? You can read just one page, right? Yeah. You can pick it up and read just one chapter. It's one page, and you can even talk about it with your friends. Try it today. I promise you it'll work. But we pulled together last year about this time. A lot of people, all we said was, are you willing to share your voice as a uniter? That was the whole question. And look at the kinds of people who showed up. If we have time, I'd love to show a short highlight reel where you'll see and hear voices. Some of them will be familiar to you, but one or two of these folks are homeless. One or two of them are people who've spent time in prison. Some of them are world famous. But I hope you'll hear in their voices the idea that this division is not our destiny. We have to choose to end it. So let's, if we can, play the highlight reel. Should I click on it? Click. See what happens.
Merhaba. Ciao. Hello.
Hey, hi, how are you?
Nie wszystko super.
My name is Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, joining this call to unite from Cape Town in South Africa.
I am so privileged to be with you here in Montgomery, Alabama.
We're coming to you from Manila, Philippines.
I am joining the call to unite to bring the joy of story time to children around the world.
My call is to make sure that we unite people by feeding them.
I've been doing my best to spread positivity.
Develop the skills of empathy and compassion.
Take a stand for those who need help the most.
Slow down our own breath, our own being, our own body in this particular moment.
Hundreds of millions of families across the world find themselves at some of the lowest points that they've ever seen.
We're united in grief. We're united in horror.
And while we're all suffering in our own unique capacity,
we need not suffer alone.
In the face of our pain, we must not forfeit our dignity.
We are aware now as we have never been before.
This is the perfect opportunity for us to do what we're doing right now. To reach out, to bring people together.
I think of it as a massive reset for the world.
We certainly need a new normal.
The question really is, what type of normal do we want to get back to?
When we come together like this, it gives us the greatest opportunity to shift the way the world looks today and to really reimagine what the world will look like tomorrow.
People are capable of making huge, radical behavioral changes when they're motivated.
We don't have to wait until the pandemic is over to unite. You know, this dream could come true right now.
we have a simple principle as uniters. We believe that we are one. Mothers and fathers, all kinds of monks, musicians, dancers, and all the gifts that humanity has to offer.
We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future.
There's no time for love like now.
This is the calling that we all are being urged to answer.
This is who we are.
Each of us at this moment needs to be a leader in our personal life, a leader in our communities, and a leader in the world.
May we all find our interconnectedness,
our place in humanity.
We rise or fall together, and we are determined to rise.
The most powerful force in the world is the individual who has realized their power to do good.
We're not just doing it for ourselves, but we're doing it for the sake of the entire planet.
Together, we can be able to walk this path towards healing.
I encourage our global community to answer the call for someone else by giving and volunteering.
Not just calling for unity, but take action.
Take action right here and right now.
We have to do more.
So we have to act as one.
We have to unite in common purpose. So join us in service, in generosity, in sharing your ideas. And when you hear the call, answer. Here I am. Send me.
So you saw Sir Ken Robinson. How many of you have seen his TED Talk? Maybe some of you have seen it, one of the most watched TED Talks in history. If you haven't seen it, unfortunately, we lost him just a few weeks after this was his last speech on the Call to Unite. But he's a great architect of creativity and inviting us to make our schools places of creativity. And he asked the question, you might have caught it in the middle of the video, what kind of normal do we want? And I'm going to invite you for the rest of this few minutes we have together to try to answer that question yourself. What kind of normal do you want? Don't assume that the normal we had is the only option. Right? Just imagine. Tammy said it. You guys can pass bills. You guys can change school boards. You guys can shape the lives of your children and the lives of the children of those around you. You all have this power to imagine a new normal. And so let's spend a few minutes just thinking about what that new normal might look like. And I'm going to prompt you to answer this question, not try to answer it for you if I can. So I'm going to give you a few prompts. Here's the first one. This is what I learned 35 years ago when I was training, when I was in the middle of my career as a young teacher. I went and met with Dr. James Comer, who was a child developmentalist at the Yale Child Studies Center, who was interested in the social life of children and how it was affecting their learning, particularly interested in black and brown children, why they were so under-optimizing their learning in schools. And he said to me on the first day of my one-year fellowship, I want you to understand the difference between shape 1 and shape 2 in the eyes of a 5 or a 6-year-old at school. So I looked at this and I had all my theories and all my books and all my platitudes about this, that, and the other thing. And he said, no, that's not it. That's not the difference. No. He said, well, you want me to give you the answer, Tim? And I was like, yeah, please give me the answer. He said, the only difference between those two shapes in the eyes of a 5 or a 6-year-old is that the shape on the left has an adult who wants the child to learn its meaning. The shapes are not inherently interesting. The shapes are interesting because the child sees the adult look in her eyes and say, I want you to know the meaning of this. And then puts up the rest of, I want you to know how they fit together. I want you to see the patterns when we add two numbers together. I want you to understand colors and shapes and designs. I want you to understand force. I want you to understand. And the only reason you care to understand is because I've already understood. And I want it for you. His simple message was, learning is a relationship. It's not a relationship between you and a fact. It's a relationship between you and another human being through which information can flow. This blew my mind. You're all looking at it like, yeah, obviously. But for me, this was mind-blowing. It changed the entire course of my career. This one opportunity to understand that if we didn't attend to the relationship factors in learning, we were missing the point. In fact, we were checking kids out. And the data show this. It still shows 40% of high school students, year after year, are totally disengaged. Imagine. And if you've got high school students, or if you have students that have gone through high school, probably if you have 4 or 5, probably 2 or 3 of them got very disengaged by the time they got to high school. Just could have cared less. Why? Because it didn't have any meaning anymore. They couldn't see the meaning in what they were being told to do. It didn't matter to them. The relationships weren't strong enough. So this is not just theory, by the way. Now we have neuroscience. This is the work of Patricia Kuehl, who studies the brains of infants. She says, all my neuroscience can be summarized in this picture. Everything you're doing right now, the way you have your arms crossed, the clothes you're wearing, the fact that you're here, is all a function of the way in which you've managed the relationships that are most important to you and the way in which you've prioritized them. Just like that little fella trying to walk like the big grown-ups. Okay? Pat Kuehl's done more work on this. I'll just show this to you very quickly because I just find it fascinating. She studied little babies as young as 9 months old as they try to learn language. So this is a study she did with children in the 9 to 11 months, teaching them Chinese and how they learn the sounds of Chinese, the phonemes of Chinese, the tones of Chinese. And so she compared that, the exact same lesson, and teaching children through a screen. Exact same teacher, exact same controlled intervention. Guess what the pickup from the screen learning? 0. They didn't learn 20% as much or 40% as much or 60%. They learned 0% from the screen compared to what they learned from the human being, looking in their eye, holding their hand, touching them. She does this fascinating experiment where she starts to be able to point out to you how children learn imitation. So here's a child at just a year old, and you can see in the first picture in the upper left-hand corner catching the gaze of the adult. And then the adult looks away. I find this fascinating. The child now at this age is already interested in what the adult is interested in. What is the adult looking at? So the child follows the gaze where the adult went. It's not staring at the adult, at what you're interested in. Now this eventually will become me wanting the BMW my neighbor owns. So it can go in a negative direction, but you see how wired we are for connection, how wired we are to be interested in and attentive to one another. So this field, you've heard, maybe, whoops, let me go back one. You heard Tammy mention it a little bit. You've heard the First Lady speak to the field of social and emotional learning. This is a field that is yours. I just want to give it to you on a silver platter. This is a parent's field. This is the art and science of translating the work of building relationships into the life of a school. And you can see, I won't go through all the details here, but obviously we can leave all this with you if you're interested. In the middle, you'll see 5 slices that look like a pie. The 2 red ones speak to teaching children skills around how to understand themselves. The 2 blue ones speak to teaching skills about how to understand and strengthen relationships. And the green one is more about tasks, decision-making, purpose, seeing your role in the world. How do you think these things through? How much time do you think we typically spend in the curriculum on teaching these lessons? Historically, almost none. Now, gifted parents teach them. Maybe not because they have a curriculum, but because they're just gifted. Gifted teachers teach them. But this is our attempt to say, let's get really good at this. Let's get really good. So what does it look like to actually teach this stuff, not just in classrooms, but to have school cultures and climates and family-school partnerships focus on things like self-awareness and relationship skills and decision-making? Here's what it looks like. A 6th grade teacher can take this stoplight, and if you're interested, I can get you copies of this, because when I learned this when I was a high school teacher, I learned this back in the 80s. It changed me as a teacher. We talk about training adults before adults can teach this to teachers. I was trained to teach this to kids, and I was like, whoa, this is really helping my marriage. You know, like every time my wife gets on my nerves, I stop, I calm down, and I think. And I watch teachers teaching this to 6th graders go. And then here's what you learn in this problem-solving strategy. You have to set a positive goal. You tell a kid, yo, somebody stole my pencil. What's your goal? To beat him up. Can't have a goal like that. Can't have that goal. You have to have a positive goal where neither you nor someone else gets hurt. Now imagine if we just taught that 2nd step, the 3rd step, set a positive goal in our political arena. You have to have a goal where someone else doesn't get hurt. Imagine if, those of you who have younger children, if you could get your kids to believe that goal about each other, not about the world around them. So these are the kinds of models that we can introduce in classrooms. Here's one for those of you who have younger children. This is much more about self-regulation. This is the turtle. And a lot of teachers teach this now, and people bring these turtles home. Recognize that you're angry. Is anybody in the room, you don't have to put your hand up. I'll just put my hand up. If you're angry, imagine you're putting your hand up. Even right now, you might not be angry at me, or you might be. I hope not. But if you are, you can. But just imagine taking a beat. Think to yourself, actually say the word stop. Do a little role play in your own mind. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just imagine you're with someone you've had it with at work or wherever. And put yourself across the table from that person right now and just imagine, maybe say it inside, say the actual word, stop. Sometimes just saying the word is enough for a child to help self-regulate. And the turtle teaches us to get all up like a turtle. You can do this now. Everybody can do this just for a second. Just pretend you're a turtle, just to make, because I'm a teacher, you know, I can't help it, right? You have to do it. In the back row, too. Come on now. And you draw yourself inward long enough with some positive self-talk to make yourself feel capable of managing the situation. We have a fabulous story of a teacher in Cleveland who said that a parent had come into her. The parent was driving in the minivan. The kid was in the back seat. And she was screaming at the child about, because he wanted to get French fries. I'm like, no, we don't get French fries today. We only get French fries once a week. We can't stop at McDonald's. No, everybody's. So she looks around and she sees her child like this. And she's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the 8-year-old child says, Mom, don't you know how to turtle? So this is how kids can teach us, but if we reinforce these things for one another, imagine the potential for skills. We can get even more advanced. This is a high school lesson. I'm just showing these to you so you get a little snapshot of how powerful this work can be. This is about how to disagree without being disagreeable. The right-hand column on this slide is the actual skills. They can be taught over 3 or 4 days to kids. How to disagree without being disagreeable. And you could put these on your refrigerator too if you like. I mean, a lot of the stuff I have all over my house. But it starts with the Lincoln quote, these kinds of skills. I don't like that person. I got to get to know him better. Instead of what we have now mostly in our culture, I don't like that person, I got to get rid of him. I got to crush him, I got to destroy him, I got to beat him. So these lessons can form a powerful alternate normal to what our children could find themselves in if they come back to school. I'm going to skip this one. Just so you know, so you're equipped, if you get in with a principal or a superintendent or a big government official who says, we don't have time for that. We've got test scores to raise. We've got academic content to teach. And maybe you're one of those people who thinks, that school better teach that academic content. Guess who else is one? Me. If the school is not teaching the content, I don't think it's a successful school. All right? But here's the good news. When you do good work in social and emotional learning, test scores go up. When you have no relationship, no meaning, and no purpose, and you tell people, Karen, work harder, do more homework, stay home longer, guess what? You get actual declines in performance. So most of the strategies we use, more time on task, more skill and drill, more information, more pounding the child, are actually counterproductive. More opening the mind, more opening the lines of communication, more connection, more relationship, more strength. Boom, all of a sudden I want to learn the periodic table. Go figure. I'm actually excited about you, Mrs. Whatever or Mr. I'm actually eager to understand where I fit in the order of things. I do want to know chemistry after all. So there's no trade-off here. There's no trade-off in the new normal between should we be doing academics or should we be doing these lessons of the heart. These benefits persist. Again, I want to show you these slides not so you get all the data, but just so you know they exist. The benefits from social and emotional learning curricula persist up to 18 years in terms of how we measure them. Imagine, I can't remember what I learned 18 months ago, much less 18 years ago. These benefits persist. Why? Because we internalize them and we generalize them into our lives. And so behavior problems go down, psychological and mental health problems go down, and achievement and sense of purpose go up, and it lasts. Some of you may say, this sounds very liberal. Ooh, very Democrat or progressive. It's not. Half the time I get a chance to speak in a room like this, people say, well, this sounds very conservative, values and skills, and it's not. It's not. It's about children. This is child-centered. If what we mean by politics is the art of building the us, then it's political. If what we mean by politics is a boxing ring of hatred, it has nothing to do with politics. It has no role in politics. We don't need politics to ruin our capacity to help inspire and illuminate the lives of our children. So sometimes red states and blue states will use slightly different language. And you see here, this is one of my master achievements, was to figure out how to make that circle in red and blue on a PowerPoint slide. This is the work of a scholar named Stephanie Jones, where she's charted how different states and different communities talk about social and emotional learning. So for some of you, you may say, well, I'm going to use the language of deeper learning, or I'm going to use the language of academic preparedness and mindsets. But it's the same stuff. Same underlying content. So we don't need the political disputes to slow us down. I'm going to keep going here. So here's the exercise. And if you have a piece of paper and you're comfortable, join me for this. I got you started. But here's the question. What kind of normal do we, the parents of the state of Utah, want? Don't go by what you learned in school. Don't go by what the superintendent or the principal, the teachers, they're wonderful, but let's not go by them right now for a second. What qualities and skills of relationships do you want for your children? I just gave you a few, but I'm sure you have your own. You don't worry, you don't have to hand it in. No grades, no hire. What ways do you think it would be important for your children to find purpose? People say that purpose is one of the most powerful predictors of life success. How do you teach it? How would you like your children to learn it? What qualities of self-awareness do you want for your children? Self-regulation, self-witnessing, self-calming, a sense of knowing how one feels, being able to control and manage your feelings. What qualities do you want for your children, for our children, around their own capacity to be aware of themselves, capable of managing themselves, capable of understanding how they're navigating the world, just the internal dialogue? What kinds of social and emotional supports do we want? Community-based organizations, outside of classroom time. What kind of service do you expect from your children? What's their responsibility? How do they learn it? Who's the teacher? Where are the lessons? How would you design a program that ensured that your children would leave school at the end of the day feeling closer and closer to a sense of duty and responsibility and service to the whole? And what other questions do you have? I'm asking this. I could never have dreamed of putting this on a slide even 18 months ago, because people would have said, we can't dream like that. Come on. We don't have time for this. Give me one thing to do. Let me implement a curriculum. Let me train our parents in problem solving. That's enough already. Let me bring in the Special Olympics programs, and we can get that done, check the box, and move on. But not now. Not now. We cannot go back the way we went in. We can't go back the way we went in. So we got to dream a little, gang. I wish I could tell you there's a perfect recipe for this. This is, in a sense, I hope, part of the agenda that you will all share in. You use your own language. You don't have to give my answers to this. I'll give you a couple of ideas. Here's what we at Castle and when I think of the work we've done through Unified Champion Schools, and I want to thank Scott again for being here, but we need to retrain our teachers. How about a major effort? The First Lady's already talking about having the first ever conference for teachers on social and emotional learning this summer, where the subject is helping them with their social and emotional challenges. Has never happened. Never happened. Wow. What if that was the first of many, where we committed to our teachers and our administrators to support them so that they can better support our children's development? Training, supports, new curriculum, new capacity for their own time and their own mental health and their own social purpose to be discovered. When we've done studies of teacher stress, teachers are among the most stressed out professions in the country. So what are you going to get if you give the most stressed out person in the country 7 hours a day with your kid? I mean, guess what? Your kid's going to come home and say, it was boring. How's school today? Boring. What'd you learn today? Nothing. So I think one thing we need to do, and again, I'm just saying, if I were to pick a room that could get this done, this is the room. Force, demand, encourage, inspire, challenge this state to embark on an effort to train and retrain our teachers to support the social and emotional health of our children. Full stop. I have, this is going to sound like I'm bragging, I'm not, this is embarrassing. I have 3 degrees in education. I have 1 class in child development. 1 semester class in child development. That's absurd. I mean, that's malpractice, really, that I have, really, it's ridiculous. I mean, I have so many classes on teaching methods in history and social studies. I have more classes, anyway, let's not get into me. Here's a second idea, a little bit more tactical. Let's have a comprehensive strategy for implementing social and emotional learning curricula. K-12. Almost everywhere we see this done, the results are fantastic. Teachers love it, kids love it. When it's done well, I should say. When it's done poorly, nobody likes it, but that's predictable, I suppose. A third strategy, when it comes to discipline, let's teach a new form of discipline, what's called restorative practices, where people are invited to heal, not just to be punished. Where restoration is the goal. I've harmed you, I need to apologize, I need to own it, and I need to do my best to make it up. As opposed to, I've harmed you, I'm out of school for 5 days. What does a kid learn by being thrown out of school about what went wrong and what they should be doing differently when they come back? Nothing. Nothing. Zero. Get predictable repetition. And then finally, the partnerships between schools and families and community-based organizations. This could be a whole new era where PTAs, youth-serving organizations, faculty, teachers, and so on, form teams to actually work together to strengthen the sense of purpose and responsibility and dignity of our children. This is just my offer. It's not a strategic plan, although feel free to use any part of it that might make sense. But I encourage all of us here in the room to think of the possibility of every school in Utah with a pre-K to 12 social and emotional learning commitment. We challenged the state this morning, Scott and I, to have every school in the state have a part of that curriculum be a unified sports team. A unified sports team where children with and without special needs play on teams together and lay the foundation, the groundwork for healing and openness and tolerance for everyone. Why not? You have a boys basketball team, you have a girls basketball team. Why not think of the new normal as every school has also a Special Olympics unified sports basketball team? And when that school pep rally comes in and the 6'5", forward or center comes charging in and the band is playing and the fans are cheering and the young women and young men who are all super fit come in, and then in comes a guy 4'11" with Down syndrome charging right down through the cheer team, and the big brass band is playing and the place is going nuts, and he puts his arms up in the air and the whole world is different. And I'm going to let you see what this might look like in a school with a short video from one of our unified champion schools in Rhode Island.
Patriots. Patriots, there we go. Yeah, Jason loves sports. Yeah, Jay loves Patriots. Who you like? Gronk? Say it. Gronk. Everyone's curious, living with a person with disabilities, how daily life is, and it's I don't know, just normal.
You're good? All right. Have a good day. All right? You're gonna be a good boy, right? I am. I know you are.
It's like a normal brother relationship. We fight a lot, and we also have great moments together. It's great. It's life.
I think that when you talk about Evan and Jay, you talk about, they're really one person here. It's not Evan, it's not Jay, it's Evan and Jay.
Jay's just big ball of joy.
A student who typically you wouldn't hear much communication from, but when you do hear it from him, you feel it. He greets you in the morning when you walk in. He wants to get up and make sure everybody's smiling and having a good time. So he may go by you, tap you on the shoulder, he may make a silly face.
Who's on your basketball team?
Evan.
Evan. Who's he again? My brother?
I'm a brother.
My brother.
Evan and Jay are instrumental in our inclusion movement. Evan Hallberg alone is the dream for a teacher.
Programs like TOPS, Special Olympics, and most recently Unified Sports have provided a foundation for individuals of all abilities to express themselves and succeed in society.
You don't really know until you're up there, right? Your heart's pounding knowing that you have to give this 1.5-page long speech in front of everyone.
I know that when I graduate from high school, I will miss the times I've spent with my brother. Even the little things, like car rides to school, with the radio booming, and I'm dancing in the back seat.
I started like sobbing a little bit, and then Jay put his arm around me, and then after that I knew I was kind of like done. But I remember that I'm talking in front of the entire school and I'm on TV, so I had to keep going. Making a contribution to a huge movement is the biggest thing anyone can really do. It feels humbling.
For this is why I choose to include. Thank you.
I'm gonna cry. Through sports like Unified, I can trust everyone to protect my brother, because they know that he's no different than anyone else. Brings like no greater joy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I leave you with Evan and Jay. I leave you with Evan's words. Just imagine if a school could be a place where you trust everyone to protect your brothers and your sisters. You know, just imagine if we actually taught people that. Like, you need to look out for each other in this school. That's the way we do it here. Imagine if we actually did that for each other a little more. Imagine if our school system, our families were oriented to this idea that our hearts matter just as much as our heads, that our capacity to cooperate is just as important as our capacity to compete, that our willingness to give of ourselves is just as important as our desire to gain for ourselves. It's not an either or, it's both. But we're out of sync. We're out of balance right now. We're out of balance. I don't think I'm saying that as an opinion. I think I'm saying it because I think we all feel it. So I hope you enjoy the book. I hope it offers you little snapshots of advice and insight from your fellow Americans from all different walks of life, ways in which they've found to get back in balance. I hope you think and feel that these little lessons we've learned quickly today are possible. This is no longer impossible. And I hope you will think if you feel a little overwhelmed, I think offer you this final photograph. This is Scarlett Lewis, a friend of mine and Tammy's, with her little boy who was killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School, Jesse. And in the midst of Scarlett's loss of a first grader, you know, the world descended and the politics started to split, and people wanted to manipulate the story this way or that way. And she felt her little boy from the other side telling her there was a different strategy. And she's built a program, it's called Choose Love. It's a social and emotional learning curriculum. And all it does is teach us that we can't always determine what happens to us, but we can determine what we choose to do when it does happen to us. If Scarlett can do this, can dedicate her life, and she's dedicated this curriculum not just to the memory of her little boy, but also to Adam Lanza, who took her little boy's life, which to me speaks to a soul much bigger almost than I can imagine. But if she can find in herself the capacity to see that poor Adam, so lonely, so angry, so alone, that he would come to the point where he did what he did. Let us build schools that don't let that happen. Not everything will get headlines like this one, but lots of our kids are struggling and suffering now, and when they go back to school, they're still going to be struggling and suffering. Let's build a new normal with the inspiration of all of you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.